Imagine a time long ago, centuries before the rise of Rome. In the heart of the Mediterranean, on the sun-drenched coast of North Africa, a new power was emerging. This was Carthage, a city destined for greatness and tragedy in equal measure. Founded in 814 BC by Phoenician explorers, Carthage was more than just another trading post. These were a seafaring people, renowned throughout the ancient world for their naval prowess and commercial acumen. They came not to conquer but to trade, establishing a strategic foothold on the edge of the known world. The name Carthage itself speaks to the city's origins. Derived from the Phoenician Carthage, it means new city. And new it was, a melting pot of cultures and languages, a hub of commerce where the riches of Africa, Europe, and the East converged. This was no sleepy outpost clinging to the shores of a distant continent. This was Carthage, destined to become a dominant force in the Mediterranean, a naval superpower that would challenge the might of Rome itself. Carthage's success was inextricably linked to its mastery of the seas. The Phoenicians, from whom the Carthaginians descended, were legendary sailors. They passed down their knowledge of shipbuilding and navigation, creating a maritime tradition that would become the envy of the ancient world. The Carthaginian navy was the backbone of its power. Their warships, sleek and deadly, patrolled the shipping lanes, safeguarding trade and projecting Carthaginian might across the Mediterranean. The trireme, a swift and agile vessel powered by rows of oarsmen, was the workhorse of their fleet. Carthaginian sailors ventured far and wide, pushing the boundaries of the known world. Their trade routes extended from the Iberian Peninsula in the west to the Levant in the east. They brought back exotic goods, precious metals, and tales of far-off lands, further cementing Carthage's reputation as a wealthy and cosmopolitan center. But their maritime dominance was not merely about commerce, it was about control. Control of the seas meant control of trade. And in the ancient world, control of trade often translated into political and military power. As Carthage's influence grew, it inevitably brought it into contact, and eventually conflict, with another rising power, Rome. Initially, the two states coexisted, their paths rarely crossing. Rome was a land power, focused on consolidating its hold on the Italian peninsula. Carthage, on the other hand, was a maritime empire, its gaze fixed on the vast Mediterranean. But their spheres of influence would eventually overlap, setting the stage for a clash of titans. The flashpoint came in Sicily, a strategically vital island lying at the crossroads of their respective empires. Both Rome and Carthage saw Sicily as crucial to their interests, and neither was willing to back down. The First Punic War, which erupted in 264 BC, was a struggle for supremacy over the western Mediterranean. It was a brutal and protracted conflict, lasting over 2 decades and marked by fierce naval battles and grueling land campaigns. Rome, though initially outmatched at sea, adapted quickly. They studied Carthaginian ship designs, even resorting to copying captured vessels, and developed a novel weapon, the corvus, a boarding bridge that allowed their legionaries to transform naval engagements into land battles. The Second Punic War, however, would etch itself into the annals of history, forever entwined with the name Hannibal Barca. This Carthaginian general, a brilliant strategist and tactician, would inflict upon Rome some of its most devastating defeats. Hannibal's audacious plan was to bypass the Roman navy altogether and strike at the heart of the Roman Republic, Italy itself. In the spring of 218 BC, he set out from New Carthage, modern-day Cartagena, Spain, with a formidable army, including a contingent of war elephants, and began his epic march across the Pyrenees and Alps. This was no ordinary military campaign. Hannibal's army faced treacherous mountain passes, hostile tribes, and the brutal winter conditions of the Alps. Yet, through sheer determination and masterful leadership, they persevered, arriving in Italy with their forces depleted, but their spirit unbroken. Hannibal's arrival sent shockwaves through the Roman Republic. He had achieved the unthinkable, crossing the impassable Alps and appearing on Roman soil when they least expected it. This was a psychological blow from which Rome would take years to recover. Section 5. Cannae, a Carthaginian masterpiece. Hannibal's march across the Alps was merely the prelude to a series of military victories that would shake the Roman Republic to its core. He outmaneuvered and outfought the Roman legions in a string of battles, culminating in the Battle of Cannae in 216 BC. Cannae was a masterpiece of military tactics, a testament to Hannibal's genius. He lured the larger Roman army into a trap, encircling and annihilating them. Roman casualties were staggering, estimated at over 50,000, including a consul and several senators. The Battle of Cannae sent shockwaves throughout the Mediterranean world. It seemed as though Rome, for the first time in its history, was truly vulnerable. Hannibal's victory emboldened Rome's enemies and sowed seeds of doubt among its allies. Yet despite this crushing defeat, Rome refused to surrender. The Roman spirit, their indomitable will to survive, would see them through this dark hour. Cannae, for all its tactical brilliance, would ultimately prove to be a Pyrrhic victory for Hannibal. Section 6. The Tide Turns Roman Resilience. The aftermath of Cannae was a critical turning point in the Second Punic War. Rome, recognizing the existential threat it faced, dug in for a long and grueling conflict. They abandoned their previous strategy of seeking decisive battles with Hannibal, instead adopting a war of attrition. Roman legions harassed Hannibal's forces, denying him the decisive victory he sought. They slowly chipped away at his army, exploiting their superior manpower and resources to wear down the Carthaginians. Rome also proved adept at learning from its mistakes. They studied Hannibal's tactics, adapting their own military doctrines to counter his strategies. The Roman general, Fabius Maximus, developed the Fabian strategy, which focused on avoiding direct confrontation with Hannibal, instead engaging in skirmishes and cutting off his supply lines. This was a war of endurance, a test of will as much as military might. Rome's resilience, its ability to absorb tremendous losses and adapt to changing circumstances, would prove decisive. Section 7. Scipio Africanus, Rome's answer to Hannibal. As the war dragged on, a new generation of Roman leaders emerged, men determined to not only defeat Hannibal, but to break Carthage's power once and for all. Among them was Publius Cornelius Scipio, later known as Scipio Africanus. Scipio recognized that to defeat Hannibal, Rome had to take the war to Carthage itself. In 204 BC, he landed in North Africa, intent on bringing the fight to Hannibal's doorstep. His campaign was a daring gamble, diverting resources from Italy and opening a new front in the war. Scipio proved to be a brilliant commander in his own right. He scored a series of victories in Africa, culminating in the Battle of Zama in 202 BC. This time it was Hannibal who found himself outmaneuvered and outfought. The Battle of Zama marked the end of the Second Punic War and the beginning of Rome's undisputed dominance in the western Mediterranean. Hannibal, defeated and facing certain capture, fled Carthage, eventually seeking refuge in the court of Seleucid king Antiochus III in Syria. Section 8. The Fall of a Civilization, Carthage in Ruins. The Second Punic War left Carthage a shadow of its former self. Stripped of its overseas possessions, its navy crippled, and forced to pay a heavy war indemnity, Carthage was relegated to the status of a Roman client state. But even in defeat, Carthage showed resilience. It focused on rebuilding its economy, once again becoming a prosperous trading center. However, this resurgence was viewed with suspicion and fear by Rome, which had come to see Carthage as a perpetual threat. The Roman senator, Cato the Elder, became obsessed with Carthage's destruction, ending every speech in the Roman Senate, regardless of the topic, with the phrase Carthago delenda est, Carthage must be destroyed. In 149 BC, Rome, using a flimsy pretext, declared war on Carthage for the third and final time. The Third Punic War was a one-sided affair. After a 3-year siege, Roman legions broke through Carthage's defenses, sacking the city and consigning it to the flames. The destruction of Carthage was total. The city was razed to the ground, its surviving inhabitants sold into slavery. Salt, according to legend, was sown into the earth to ensure that nothing would ever grow there again. Section 9. The Legacy of Carthage. An enduring footprint. The Carthaginian Empire, once a maritime superpower that challenged the might of Rome, was no more. Its destruction sent a chilling message throughout the ancient world. Rome would brook no rivals. Yet, despite its dramatic fall, Carthage left an indelible mark on history. At its zenith, it was a center of trade, innovation, and cultural exchange. Its maritime prowess, shipbuilding techniques, and commercial networks influenced the ancient world. Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian general who nearly brought Rome to its knees, remains a figure of fascination and military genius. His audacious crossing of the Alps and his tactical brilliance at battles like Cannae continue to be studied by military historians today. The story of Carthage is a cautionary tale, a reminder of the cyclical nature of empires and the fickle hand of fate. It is a story of ambition, resilience, and ultimately, tragedy. And though Carthage itself may lie in ruins, its legacy continues to resonate through the centuries, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, both in triumph and in defeat.